All right, man. Well, listen, man. Without further ado, we're going to get our very special guest in the building, Mr. Anthony Watson. Give a round of applause. Give a round of applause.
What's up,
Let me
brother?
let me get let's give it properly. Let me give the flowers back to y'all. I appreciate y'all.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely, man. Absolutely.
yeah,
I like how that segued in. It just, when we did it, he just popped up. I
yeah,
pressed the accept and he just came in so perfectly. That was perfect.
yeah, yeah, for sure, man. For
Yes,
sure,
yes,
man.
man. So we want to welcome you, man, to our podcast, Two Cents and Change the podcast. I'm sure you're familiar with my brother. You know, I'm his big brother. You know, I'm the one that
Yeah.
always that make sure he's always in check. You know, I got to keep him in
Yes,
check.
sir.
You know,
Yes, sir.
throughout the years, man. So
Nice,
it's a
nice to
pleasure to
meet you.
meet you.
He'd
Pleasure to
have been
meet you.
calling me big bro if he actually sacked up and played me in basketball. You know, we've been talking all that mess.
Oh,
Yeah, yo, this was years in the making. That's why I told you we will always talk about playing. It's been years in the making, man. Years in the making, man.
I think I
We
need
we
to
we we,
settle
we
that
gonna get it done.
score.
We gonna get it done, man. We gonna. I see my boy been in the gym working out, so
I'm trying,
I'm like,
trying,
all
man. I'm
right.
trying to, get that Christmas and Thanksgiving, turkey and ham out my system.
Oh yeah, that part. That
Always
part.
love, man. You looking
So
good too, man.
I appreciate it, man. I remember the first day that we met. I remember like coming in to like get a pair of shoes for you because we met each other working at Dick's Sporting Goods,
mhm.
Yes,
and
yes,
then we
yeah,
were we were just talking shop the entire time. But I was always somebody that was raised, because I come from Jersey. I know that you moved to Jersey recently when we
yeah,
like first connected and
yes, yes.
stuff. And the best way I was always raised to make friends is to say hello and to do it without telling anything about yourself. Let that be something that people learn about you, because people that are wrapped up in themselves make for very tiny packages. So
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's a germ. People wrapped up in themselves makes for very tiny packages.
makes a very tiny package, because
Makes it very I
at the end
like
of the
that.
day, accomplishments, accolades, those are only meant for you. Those are only meant for you to prove that the things that you set your mind to are something that you can achieve. You
Mm.
know, people that lead with things, that's all they have, and that's all they're ever going to have. Long after they retire, that's the thing that they're always stuck in. How many people have you guys met who sports that didn't even make it anymore? Be like, man, back in my day when I was a junior high school champion, all state, and we set the record that now did this. I'm like, bro, it's 2026. That was like 1970. I was
Right.
like, back when you had three teams in one conference, and a winning record
yeah.
was winning one game. So sports has evolved. But the
Hmm.
beautiful thing that I love what you guys are doing is you guys are taking something that has saved a lot of communities and a lot of young people. So that's why I said, look, I applaud y'all. I give y'all your flowers because you
Hmm.
give
Yeah,
people an outlet
thank you.
to actually showcase the attributes and the characteristics that you take from sports to
Hmm.
apply to your everyday life. You learn discipline,
Yeah,
you learn commitment, you learn
Hmm.
dedication, to programs, to coaches, to training, and you can apply all of that into every single task that you have at your job and your relationships, learning how to do all of those things that actually produce longevity and results,
Hmm.
as opposed to people who just wish for things to happen and it doesn't work out.
Right. Absolutely, man. Listen, that's
yeah,
very well said. And I kind of
yeah.
feel bad that we got to go through this backstory because you said when people did stuff back in 19 something something, but we're going to take it back. We're just going to go back to 2014. That's as far as go. We're going to go back
Yes, sir.
and then we're going to just align it up to where you at now. That's cool.
Yes, sir. Always.
That's what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm gonna kick it off, bro. Then we just gonna do it
Yeah,
just like that. So
yeah,
I have a other podcast, no advisory podcast that I do. So normally how I do them, I was telling my bro how we're gonna do this podcast. We're gonna start from the beginning, start from the end, and bring us up to the beginning. So listen, man. In 2014, I went through your Instagram, scrolling through your shit. I gotta be nosy, gotta do background, gotta
I was like, hey, everyone's just like, I stalked you on social media. I was like, it ain't
yeah,
stalking if it's a public
it's
profile.
a
I was like,
public
that's
profile.
information anyone can find. So,
That's facts. So I was, strolling. So I saw in 2014 where I seemingly looks like your journey began. You was training for
right.
bobsledding.
Hmm.
And I remember the movie Cool Runnings when I started looking at that.
Here we
And
go.
I referenced that. I saw it in a few other posts after. I'm like, oh, he referenced Cool Runnings. But let's start there. Let's start in 2014 when you was starting your training regimen, and bobsledding. Because you actually do skeleton racing. It's not bobsledding, if I'm correct me if
Yes.
I'm I'm wrong.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I started in bobsled. So everyone who's seen the Cool Runnings movie, the Disney film, everyone kind of has an idea of what bobsledding is. And so after that was when I got into skeleton. Now, skeleton is when you go down the same ice track on your stomach head first, and that's just a
Mm-hmm.
solo person's event. So, it's not for the faint-hearted. You learn a lot of things by all the bumps and bruises that you get, and you're somebody that has to learn how to take the good days as well as the bad days. And it taught me a lot of things, because I was somebody that didn't know how to maintain a sled, didn't know how to do anything. Then I had to learn other things that you never thought that an athlete would have to learn. I have to learn how the ice is going to be when it's a warm day above 30 degrees, how it's going to be when it's below 20 degrees, if the ice is hard, what kind of metals that you need to put on your sled so that you can go faster, if there's frost on the track, how to set up your sled so that you don't lose any speed. And it's just like I was taking all this information in as a young guy coming in, and my journey started a little earlier than that, because I wanted to be an Olympian in track and field. And so I was doing AAU, USATF, U18, U16, U17, U20 leagues, trying to qualify for the London Games. And then when all of that stuff went sideways, I had a knee injury that kind of like took me out of track and field for a year and a half. And so when I tried coming back, I was quick. I just wasn't as fast as I used to be. And so my dream of actually like representing the United States in track was kind of shot. So I went through every single Team USA page at the time, saw that bobsled and skeleton was the only Olympic sport that took tryouts. So you just had to come in, you had to run a 60-meter sprint or a 40-meter dash, then you had to do a shot put toss, a broad jump, and then you had to do a max power clean 1 rep, and then your max back squat rep for 3. And so based off of that was when they invited you to like the programs to train and everything else. And so after doing that, scored second highest in the nation in my class, then came to do a school was where they taught you how to slide. Then after that went into the elite development program for Team USA, and then, saw my trajectory of the Olympics not really attainable. So I have dual citizenship through my father, who was born and raised in Jamaica, and, got to make Olympic history as the first ever Jamaican to, compete in the sport of skeleton ever at an Olympics in Olympic history ever. And now when people will hear that, they think that, when you do the first thing in anything, it's supposed to be a big deal. But I tell everyone, look at Jackie Robinson, look at Jesse Owens, all these people who were literally the first African American in something. And I don't go anywhere in the name of my color or my skin, because I'm an athlete. And at the end of the day, it's not about what you look like. It's about if the person who's capable of doing something can actually do what it says on paper, or if they can defy the odds of what people already have saying about that. And so, thinking about all of that, like I said, it was hard. I had to go through a lot of seasons where I was alone, like there were a lot of people that didn't like me because, I was a threat to them, but I sit back and I look at everybody now and I tell them, I said, I've earned a lot of respect from a lot of athletes around the world, not because I'm someone that has a slightly better tan than the rest of them at birth, but because I'm somebody that when it was time to race, I earned it because there was nothing they could do to actually get past me.
Right.
But it's something that a lot of people fail to remember, that sports teaches you how to earn something. This whole thing where everyone gets like a little consolation prize trophy where, just for showing up, I feel like that paralyzes people, because people show up to work all the time and then they want raises for something that they haven't earned. People show up and just do the bare minimum in relationships and then they wonder why it's stagnant. Like you have to be willing to do the work that nobody else is when nobody else wants to. That's what separates the goats from the sheep. Goats are the people who are remembered, and they're few and far between. And, I'm somebody that still to this day claims Jordan as the GOAT. So I'm sorry. I mean, I know we're talking Olympics, but Jordan's the GOAT. Jordan's the GOAT for this reason and this reason alone.
I know I like this guy.
Jordan was dedicated. Forget stats, okay? Because there's always going to be someone that jumps higher, runs faster, does whatever. But I mean, like the name of the game and everything now has changed to save the longevity of every athlete involved. And the only thing that seems like it's a real sport nowadays is mixed martial arts, because people are legit fighting each other. But football, like now it's basically two-hand touch or flag football, because everything is a personal foul or unnecessary roughness. Basketball, things where it's like people used to prove their physicality. They'd be in the gym, they'd be in the court shooting. They'd actually have to come up with plays to get around people. Now you got dudes that are like 6'11", 7'3", 7'4", and that's the average now, is what it seems like in the NBA. And you got them playing point guard positions because now everything is pick, pop, and shoot. is pick and roll, and then it's either dish off or it's launch a three, that kind of thing. So Jordan will always be the best to me because Jordan just wasn't a great athlete. He was an influential icon off the court. And that's what shows what kind of athlete you are and the kind of influence you have, So you don't see people lining up to get LeBron sneakers. I was like, LeBron's got to deal with Jordan's company. It
My
ain't the
brother
other way
loves
around.
you. Yo, Anthony, my brother loves you. He loves you.
Listen. I'm a realist, okay? Because I don't live my life on the internet. I'm somebody that watched Jordan playing, and it's just like people would line up to see if the people could stop one guy.
One guy.
I was like, and everyone's like, well, LeBron took all these teams to the finals. I'm like, yeah, but I said, listen, when Jordan was in the NBA, he never called Magic Johnson to team up with him. He never called Larry Bird. One of my favorite MCs said it the best. He was just like, he said he would never do that because Magic Johnson is my barometer. How great am I if I'm partnering up with the other greatest player in the league right now? And you've got nobody in the NBA now that knows how to be committed to anything. You see the stars of every single team getting all this money just to sit the bunch in their nice, expensive outfits every single game, while the sixth men and the rotation players are the ones that are putting in the work. And then they come in a crucial game, do the bare minimum, and then they get all the credit. The LeBron generation has taught people that if you make a big fuss and you do the bare minimum, because look, dude's been in the NBA for over 20 years now, or approaching 20 years or something like that.
23rd.
Yep,
It's just
23rd.
like, dude, your son's playing in the league. Let him shine now, because now he's literally forever going to he killed Bronny's career.
Damn,
Because
sure did.
now that he's playing with his dad, he's got that on his career record forever. I would have gone someplace else or been on another team or something like that, because at least in that it would have been father versus son, but father and son. Now you're grooming up everybody else to do all these kinds of things. Jordan, my Mount Rushmore of the top four athletes in the NBA are Michael Jordan. Then you got Kobe Bryant, you got Tim Duncan, and I would even. Hey, shut up. It's like we've had this conversation time and time again. And then it's a toss up between Larry Bird and Magic. For the simple reason that these people were home players. They stayed on the team and made those teams around them great teams because of the effort that they put into an organization. Now, if players aren't in the role of getting a championship, you'll see them with 2 seasons for one team. You'll barely see them play because they're in contract negotiations that they don't want to play for. Then they're on somebody else, or they're injured. They got a finger injury. And back in the day, these old heads used to go and play through injury because they wanted to earn what they were worth, but they had to have the pedigree behind them. Now you pay people millions of dollars for the potential of what they could be without them even having to prove themselves. That's the generation of athlete now, which is produced in masses. All of these people that now want all of these deals for high school, college, and they don't have people training them on how to read contracts, how to be, good with money, how to invest properly, which is why a lot of these people, they're good for a season or two. Then you hear about them in the news later about how they're broke or they're in jail. So all of these lessons are what I had to learn, growing up here in Jersey and everything else before I made it to the world stage. And there are lessons that I'm still learning. But like I tell everyone, I was like, the lesson of sports is this. It's always to see whether or not what people's perception based off of statistics is something that can actually. And it's a great lesson for everybody else because everyone will point to history and time when they've been like, look, there was a time where these people had 6 of their all-stars out and they had to rally as a team. And do something good. Every person had a role, a position that they had to fill and play. The same thing in your families and your friend circles and in life. You have a role in a position that you got to play that if you don't do it well, you compromise the safety of everybody else around you because you got a job to do and nobody else can do it better than you can. And more people, I think, need to be taught those kinds of things. And that's what I had to learn because in the Olympics, a lot of people think that I was a millionaire. I wasn't. I was like, I had to raise money for my training. I had to raise money.
Dude, when you told me about that, I was bro, when Anthony told me about that part of it, I thought it was something else. He really broke that part down to me. And I'm like, wow, that's something that I only found out, me and Anthony, when he told me that. I thought it was Olympics and something, but no. When he really broke it down and explained to me what he was going through to try to even get back at what he went through to get there, I was like, wow.
Man, it's crazy.
You can continue, Anthony, to break it down, but I just had to make sure I chimed in because that had an impact on me when you informed me of that.
Because listen, before I also saw that he was a part of an agency called the Bella Agency. So tell people how important it was then, to have the agency. Are you still with them now?
No, I'm not with them anymore. Bella
Okay.
Agency was a modeling agency in New York and Los Angeles. And so I
Mhm.
was like doing all this extra work on the side, but I'd have to drive up to New York, and I'm in South Jersey now. So, that's a trek.
Mhm.
Yes.
I'd have to hop on the train, get on the bus, or like drive up there, pay $1 million for bridge tolls and parking, and then go through all the traffic, like go up there for a 10-minute audition, drive 2.5, 3 hours back. And so, like I have spent a lot of time on the road, and, like every single penny I earned from 2012 up until 2019, 2020 was all for my Olympic career, because Olympians don't get paid. You look at the Olympics, it's a nonprofit amateur league, which means that it's not professional. So people don't pay their athletes. So if you
Mhm.
guys want to watch something really awesome, I would suggest, if you guys have Netflix, watch Icarus. It's the story of like the doping scandal that happened during the Sochi Olympics in 2014 with the Russians, and then it talks about how Olympic federations run. So Olympic federations will get all of these big name contracts from like BP and like Camps of America and like all these other sponsors like Under Armour, BMW, Mercedes, all these kinds of things. And so what happens is they'll give like $1 million to the organization. The CEO of the organization and the top heads will take, 100,000 each, and then they'll pass it down to the admins of everything else. Then they got to pay out all the staffers that, make all of this other stuff. So by the time it comes down to the athletes like myself, there's only a couple $100 left.
Damn.
And so we're responsible for paying for everything. So I had to raise money to pay for my coaches, my equipment, my traveling, my housing, my lodging, my training fees, my race fees, my coaching fees, all everything that you think would have to be paid for, I had to pay for. My coach alone cost me $70,000 a season.
A season.
And a season was only 4.5, 5 months. So
God.
I'm raising money, then I have to pay for a trainer, then me, I had a nutritionist, I had all these other people that were doing me favors, because I'm like, I'm a struggling athlete. Can you just like help me out? I could only pay for a little bit. Like, no, no, no. If this is what you're aspiring to do, I built relationships like that going into this. But, if I had a coach that traveled with me, I had to pay for my hotel, plus my flight, plus his flight and his hotel, all of his meals, plus his fees on top of coaching me, on top of all of that. And so you take all of that into consideration, which is why now when you watch the Olympic trials in any sport and you see athletes devastated and crying, falling down, and they can't stand up, because that is years of work. I spent
Damn.
13 years training and competing in my Olympic sport. And it was winter. That was 13 years where I missed Thanksgiving, 13 years where I missed Christmas, 13 years where I missed the birth of my nieces and my nephews. I missed family birthdays and all this other stuff. And then I was gone from September until April, home from May until August. And so, like I was never in any relationship because there was no time,
No time,
and,
right.
I was always on the move, and I never owned anything, and I only ever had what I could fit into a suitcase. So I
Damn.
was like a nomad, and, I put everything into it. And, I sit here now as an Olympian, but I'm also somebody that sits here as somebody who has been on the other receiving end of where things don't go so well. And
Mm.
so, the journey that taught me in the end was how to stay focused.
Mhm.
Because it is so easy when you miss a training deadline or all this other stuff, or like you have a terrible run, or like you didn't do all that stuff, to fall apart. But
Mhm.
I invested everything in that. So my mindset was just like, I have spent every penny. I can't just go home and say I did my best and just like try to find something else, because I'm going home to nothing.
To nothing. Damn. So,
And
and
I
it says how much you think you spent in total. And
$287,000.
damn, $287,000 just to compete in the Olympics.
And that was 3 years when I was paying for the best of the best, when I actually had sponsors behind me that were actually trying to help. Before
Mm.
that, if you add up everything in total, it comes close to like 780 something thousand dollars
Damn.
that I've put out there, and everyone's like, well, how'd you pay for it? I was like, prayer and like the generosity of everybody else who believed in me more than I believed in myself some days.
Right. Yeah, because I saw on your timeline you did a couple of fundraisers and stuff like that
Hmm.
to get to get up the funds. That's crazy. That's a good point, because people don't see, they just see surface level of things, right? They don't see what's be underneath the surface and what you really had to do and able to pave the concrete, to have the beautiful things. It's the grind, is what people don't necessarily see. So that's why I'm glad it's important to have these conversations so people can see, oh, I'm gonna be Olympian thinking everything will be paid for me by nope, you gotta pay for it out of your pocket.
Hmm.
And like, it's a good point when you said, when you see them people crying, that's like years of like
Yeah.
financial struggles that they had to go through in order to get to that point and not being able to live up to what they worked so hard for. I know
Yeah.
now seeing that in hindsight, like it's devastating to some people when they go through that, man. So
Well,
I'm glad
listen to
you
this,
said
because
that.
Michael Phelps is a friend of mine. You know, so he's the most decorated Olympian in Olympic history as a
Mm,
swimmer. He went to the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Australia, placed I think 6th or 16th,
mm,
and you know he came from a single parent household. His mom had to work 4 part-time jobs just to support his training.
mm,
And you know, when he won his first Olympics, when he won his first contest in Athens, he was somebody who came out, and that's when he developed the habit of eat, sleep, swim. He was winning so
mm,
much because he didn't have any life outside of just training. You know,
mm,
burning all those calories in the pool for 10 hours every single day, swimming laps, and then perfecting it just to be this much faster than his opposition. And you saw
mm.
in all of those races where it came down to tinier than a fingernail's difference when they touched that wall, and they
Yep.
kept winning gold after
Yeah.
gold after gold. Now, people will look at him and be like, oh, he's such a great athlete. But I'm just like, listen, you look at that man's life for the greater part of 16 years
What he had to
where all
do.
he knew was just, I'm going to wake up at 4 in the morning. I'm going to go lift weights, and then I'm going to go swim from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. I'm going to go eat
Mm,
in between the pool and then do all this other stuff. That's the accumulation. Simone Biles, her parents, on top of everything that she did, both of her parents had to work, you know, part-time jobs just to be able to afford everything that she was doing. You know,
mm,
so all of this stuff are lessons and things that people, they only see, like you said, they only see the surface. And I tell everyone, because when I got to the Olympics, was having such a traumatic experience with the country that I was representing there, that
mm,
when I got there, I was complaining to one of my best friends on the British team. And, you know, he pulled me aside and he was just like, look where you're standing. He's like,
mm.
0.0017% of the world's population is ever going to say that they got to stand where you are right now.
Yep.
He's like, the Olympics aren't supposed to change you in your wallet. They're supposed to change you here,
Mm,
because right here was where the dream happened. And right here is where it's being fulfilled. He's like, look around. There are a lot of people here that are on their last limb, are having all these issues outside of their sport that are going to make them walk away and never talk about this again. He's like,
mm,
learn how to use this so that when you get the opportunity to tell young people and look them in the face and tell them that they can achieve anything they want, you believe it for yourself. You
mm,
got a lot of people out here that are spewing all this fake news because it's just like it sounds good in a motivational speech, but yet their lifestyles contradict everything about who they are when the cameras
mm,
aren't rolling and when people aren't there to give them kudos. You know,
mm.
so that was something that I had to learn through that entire experience. And I tell everyone, if you're not willing to give everything you have for the things that you are, even if you're only invested 99%, that 1% is what can make the tower tip over. And that 1% is also what can push you through the finish line. You've got to be locked in no matter what. And I said, your biggest critics are always going to be the people who are closest to you because they don't understand.
Right. They
But your
don't. Yep.
dreams are only ever supposed to make sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because that way, when you actually achieve something, whenever you come into any task, you come with the mindset that I did this, this was the result, and this is what I bring to my team and my group right here.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to my man Ark of the Fuck It. He said, bro
Yeah.
got the Olympic rings chain on. So that shows that he's official. He's stamped in this world.
You
He's
know,
Yes,
and the
stamped,
funny
sir.
thing,
government.
yo, Anthony also told me too. I remember when he about the chain and then with the tattoo. And it's funny, after you told me about like, you know, being Olympics and having a tattoo, I started noticing other Olympians with the tattoo.
Yep.
There's a lot of things Anthony told me, like when we
Yeah.
connected and that I got to
Oh yeah, oh
learn.
yeah. I got the tattoo. I'll show up
Yeah,
right quick. Where
You got the
yeah.
tat
say bust
because
that
you
bust out of
also
this
got
t-shirt.
like a certificate that says like you can actually use what the
And
acronym like Olympian from that
Yes.
certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that too. So
and
this is real
and
deep.
and quote me if I'm wrong, Anthony. You got it done up some more because when I seen it before,
I
you didn't have
did.
all the other stuff around it, right?
It was just the rings. I put the olive leaf
Okay,
around it, and then I have a wording on the back of my arm that
you
says
see?
sight to use, out to use, for
Yeah,
to use.
okay.
It's the Greek motto of the Olympics when it originated, which means faster, higher, stronger in Greek.
See, I
Hey,
remember my boy sounded when it was just the
got
ring.
it.
See,
Yeah.
see.
So I also saw like you are an avid musician. So tell us about that. I saw you on there playing a little guitar. You know, you
Yeah.
singing and doing karaoke. I'm like, okay, Ed, my man singing and shit, playing. Tell us
Look,
about that.
Look, I grew up in a very humble family. You know, my parents were people that never really let us play video games or like watch a lot of television. You know, like my dad was somebody who was like really adamant about go read a book and go pick up something and learn and practice using your imagination and stuff. So my mom is the musical one of the family. She's the one who played piano. My dad sings and sings really good, but he doesn't have any musical capabilities and stuff. And so my sisters, all of them are professional level piano players. I play the piano professionally at professional levels, but you know, I've picked up guitar, I do bass, I play drums, you know, like I do percussion, ukulele, and a bunch of other stuff because I just, you know, I had a lot of time on my hands, but you know, it came in handy, you know. So I mean, like I did music professionally for a little bit, and then when that didn't pan out, I was like, I just want to go back to sports. That's where I felt at peace, you know.
Right.
And so there's a lot of different things that I use to kind of like cope in between training and between everything else, so that I wasn't just like a one-dimensional, one-trick pony, you know. I mean, like I do art, I paint, I sketch, I draw, you know. I did culinary school for a little bit, so I like to chef it up from time to time. You know, I'm trying to be a good trophy husband someday, whenever that happens.
A wise man once told me, take trying out your vocabulary. You know, take
Yeah,
it out. You know, you
stop
aiming,
trying,
you
start
doing.
doing. You know,
Start doing. You know, speaking of training, I saw, you know, I saw that you was doing a lot of your training in Utah, you know, prepping, you know, for the Olympics. So tell us about that. How did that rigorous training in Utah prepared you to the Olympics?
okay, so I lived in Lake Placid, New York first for 3 years with Team USA. Then, when I left Team USA and joined the Jamaican teams, I moved out to Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, the thing is that people don't really realize how training works because we go on a track in the wintertime. So everyone in the summer is like, well, how do you slide in the summer? And I'm like,
Duh.
you don't. There's no ice. So I'm
Right.
just like, in the summertime, it's heavy lifting. It's sprinting every single day and like working on techniques and pushing and different kinds of things to like make you a little bit faster at the start, because you can't win a race from a push, but you can lose it if you start far behind the rest of the field from the very beginning. So, you know, training out there, Utah is a beautiful state, you know, but there's too many distractions. You know, when I lived in Lake Placid, the Olympic Training Center was at the top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do. And to be honest, I loved it there more than I did in Utah. We were in Park City. We're about 45 minutes away from Salt Lake. So you had the Jazz, you had like, you know, all these other things, downtowns, and like, you know, before Utah became like the nesting place for all the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, that reality TV show and whatnot. It's always been like a touristy place where people come to ski, and like, you know, Sundance movie festivals, film festival is there. So a lot of things, you know, that made it like fun, but I found myself getting distracted there a lot, you know. And the reason I like Lake Placid better was because the Olympic Training Center had everything. So picture it like a college campus. You got the gym, you got the track, you've got the mountain that has the track there, and then you have like the facility that has dorms, you know, a cafeteria, weight room, and then sauna, sports med, and then basically all that kind of stuff. So you had no choice but to focus on training. In Park City, you had to either rent Airbnbs, hotels, or like timeshares with other athletes and save, and so that you could like chip in. And I remember living in like a 1-bedroom condo with like 9 bobsledders at one point. And I was sleeping on couch pillows in the living room, getting stepped on at night when people had to wake up and go to the bathroom, you know. And so, but that's the story of the journey. That's the level of commitment that I had to go through, because I'm just like, I can't afford to like live any place by myself. So this is where it's got to be. And in my head, I'm like, every single day I had to come back to that. Every single day I had to start in that. I was like, I have got to win. I have got to be better, because if I'm better, maybe it'll lead to more, so I don't have to be living like this.
Right.
From time to time, you know. And you know, it had its dark days. It really did, you know. I never told you this when we worked at Dick's together, but you know, there was one year where I almost took my life because that's how mentally stressed I was.
Wow.
Let me give you a short little history lesson. I competed for the Jamaicans, yes, you know, but the Jamaicans hated me. They hated me because I was American-born Jamaican. So in their eyes, I wasn't a real one. I was somebody who came. I was somebody who came from an underprivileged neighborhood up here in Jersey, you know. But because I'm American, you know, they have a term for you in the island. It's called uptown. It's our equivalent to bougie, you know. So they think that just because I came here and I came from here that I had it easier than some of them did. And I mean, like, to be honest, I was like, you can be just as bad as some other people can be here. And that's not because of anyone's fault. You know, sometimes it's just circumstantial. But my family didn't have any money to support me in, you know, and it was something where I had to, one, trust God to get me through it, because this was something that He had put on my heart years before. And then I was somebody that almost gave up on it. So competing for a country that didn't want you and started putting hurdles in my way to make sure that I didn't qualify and that they were favoring other athletes over myself, because I was the only Skelly athlete. And then I was ruining the branding because it was always the Jamaican bobsled team. Now, when they had to officially and legally change it to Jamaica bobsled and skeleton, they were like, it's going to ruin branding, that kind of thing. So they left me out of team meetings. They left me stranded places. They took all of my funding away. They did all these kinds of things. I spent nights literally sleeping outside, homeless. I remember one year I ran out of money. I ran out of money for the year of the Olympics was the absolute hardest for me. I ran out of funding during the season, and my family was scraping and scrounging every single loose penny that they had week after week after week. And they were sending me, you know, like $200 here, $300 here. And, you know, it was coming down to choices every day of, am I going to feed myself or am I going to take this and go train? And I would go train and I would figure out the rest. And everyone would be like, we're going to go get done. I'm like, I can't, I'm broke. And people would be like, it's okay, we'll pay for you. And they're like, nobody likes feeling like the charity case, you know, but
Right.
it was something that happened like too often, that when people started seeing the pattern, people started pulling away because they're like, well, he's just too much of a burden and everything else. And, you know, the mental warfare that I took on in my mind, because I was 27, because I'm 36 now. I had just turned 28, you know, and I'm watching my family struggle. I'm watching them literally get money from places where they didn't have any, falling behind on bills, not being able to pay groceries. And in my heart, I'm thinking that I'm putting them through that. I'm thinking that I'm the one that's bankrupting them. I'm the one that's out here, you know, like living this fool's dream, because there's no guarantee in it. Because I could do all of this training, and if I miss a race and I finish beneath something else, it doesn't matter how good I do after that. I'm never going to achieve it, and it'll just be something that I tried my best to do but didn't accomplish. And so I was stuck and stranded. My country had abandoned me. My teammates had left me. I had teammates that were there that were snitching on me because they wanted more things for themselves and they wanted me eliminated and out of the picture. So I remember one day coming to like stay at their house, and I was secretly gonna like try and like sneak in and just have them hide me someplace, because I couldn't afford to stay where I was. My friends were all going to Europe for European championships and I couldn't afford to go. So I get to the house, and my coaches in the nighttime took my team from Salt Lake City and took them to Canada. And so I'm stuck there. So, and I tell everybody else that it's just like, I broke into the track, climbed to the top of the ski jumps, and was about to jump. I had 4% left on my phone, and I called my dad. And I'm going to be valiant. I'm just going to tell him goodbye before because at the end, look, in my mind, I'm just like, I'll be doing everyone a favor. I'm making everyone broke. I'm making everybody else struggle. And I said, all for something that is not even a guarantee. And so when I got there, the first thing my dad told me, he was just like, I was praying for you, and the Lord told me that you were in danger. So what's going on? And in a second, I just broke down and I just tried to tell him everything. And then he was like, well, first things, get down. And he's like, we'll figure it out. Then my phone died. I spent 2 nights sleeping outside in negative 20 something degrees under a porch. And then the answer came 3 days later when the police showed up. They ransacked all of my stuff. I told them the entire story. After the end, when everything checked out, they took me to the airport, dropped me off, and just told me good luck. I slept in the airport lobby for 4 days, having all of my family here scrounge money to get me a plane ticket to come home. I get home. I was malnourished. I had lost 16 pounds because I was in starvation mode, to the point where people don't realize how big starvation mode actually is. The smell of food will trick your stomach into thinking it's full, and then you'll go on without eating anything. You eat like a grape, or like you have a cracker, and then your stomach and your system hoards it because it never knows when your next meal is going to come. So it tricks you into being full that way. So when I came home and I started eating, I couldn't hold anything down. I was throwing up everything from time to time, and all of that stuff, because people didn't think I deserved where I needed to be, and I almost let it kill me. you
Wow.
know and then my sister, God bless her, I love her to death. My younger sister was a nurse at the time. I didn't see her for the 2.5 weeks that I was there. She was a nurse working, and she worked every single day from the time I was home until the time I left. And she came back and she brought me a $7,000 check of all of her overtime, all of her 2 weeks of pay, and every shift that she had picked up. And she said,
Wow.
I did all of this so that you could qualify, you know? And so I flew to Switzerland, had a really good race, flew back to the United States. They lost my sled in transit. So my sled was like nowhere to be found. I had to drive on bald tires in a borrowed car from Lake Placid, New York to Albany, where they said it was. And then they said, oh, we thought it was your sled. It's just your suitcase. So I drive even further from Albany to Newark in the same snow conditions and everything else. I remember calling my family being like, they're like, where are you? I was like, I'm in a car driving. It's like 1 a.m. and I have 3 days to train and race for official training runs. So official training is this: during the week of a race, a lot of athletes take days off because they want to save all of their energy for race day. But the rules are you have to complete 2 successful runs from stop to bottom without crashing during official training days. And I think the period is like 4 days. And then once you do that, then you can come and watch the track or just like take time off and just like mentally prep, get your sled race ready and everything else. And it was coming down to the day before the last day. So I got 2 days left, and I'm spending the full day driving all day and then through the night and then all night long until the very last day of official training. And then I get to Newark, and then it's like I'm fighting with the airport staff because they lost my sled. They won't get it. They won't look for it. They're telling me there's nothing we can do. I'm sitting here yelling at somebody.
Wait, what
And
airline
then
was this?
United. Can't stand United. So,
Nice.
you know, all that stuff happened. I get there, and then, you know, some gentleman, God bless him, because he was listening to the whole thing. He's like, describe what your stuff looks like. He went into the back for almost an hour, came back with all of my equipment. And
Wow.
I didn't have much money to give him, but I gave him $20. He said, it's not about the money, it's about the customer service. He's like, if you want to do me a solid, go qualify for the Olympics and thank me that way. I drove all night.
Yeah.
I drove
Salute.
what was
Salute,
supposed to
man.
be a 4-hour drive because I was driving in the middle of a blizzard in upstate New York on icy
Upstate. Yep.
snow roads in a car
Yeah.
that had every condition for failure. I finally get to the track. Official training starts at 9 a.m. I get to the track at 7:30. I don't have any time to walk, see what it is. I throw my sled together, have 2 of the worst runs ever, finally qualify for official training, and then, you know, go home and I just like sleep for the rest of the day. My family surprises me and they show up like my race weekend. And so having them there, I think I just like broke down. I'm like, oh, this has been so awful. I don't know if I'm just going to work it out. So, you know, they prayed for me and they told me, listen, it's just like you can be in the center of God's will. And that's when all hell breaks loose. And that's not for you to discourage you, to tell you that what you're doing is wrong. It's for you to be in a position where everything you could possibly do is impossible so that Jesus can show up and actually do something through you. So that's what I had to learn. So I had 2 of the best races in my life after that. And then came the hard part of waiting. So I finished 5th and I finished 4th during that entire race sequence. And then that trajectory through the races that I had all season put me at 87th in the world out of 236th. And so, but the thing is that they only take the top 60 to qualify, but each country only has either one quota spot, and the max you can have is 3. So the countries that always usually get 3 quota spots of athletes are the United States, Canada, Germany, Russia, and I think like Korea, or like, and then the host country. So I was there watching every single spot get filled with the country's best that they were willing to send. And then it came down to 6 athletes fighting for 5 spots. It was Israel got theirs, Ireland, Italy got theirs, then Norway got one, and then the last one I think was Ghana. And then it came down to the last spot, which was a toss-up between Luxembourg, Jamaica, and Ireland. And so the Luxembourg Olympic Committee had a 47-year-old athlete who was a really good personal dear friend of mine, but because of how old he was, we all figured that it's just like they didn't want to send him or do anything to be with him because they didn't want him to embarrass them. That kind of thing. It's like, you're old, you're not going to be able to do anything like that. And it broke my heart to see that because he did really well. And so it came down to me and Ireland. And so they took the best races that we had for that entire year. And then I just edged out Ireland by 0.2 of a second in my 8th race. And so it was January 23rd, 2018, where I got a text message at 5:30 in the morning saying that the International Bobsled and Skeleton Federation and Olympic Committee offered Jamaica the final spot. Congratulations, Anthony. You're going to the Winter Olympics. Be prepared to hear from so-and-so. And it was just like, I sat in my bed in this exact space where I'm sitting right now. And I cried for an hour before I managed to get the strength to walk downstairs to tell my family that I qualified for the Olympics. You
Like
know,
those are all tears of
Yeah,
like
yeah, yo,
beyond joy, like of
salute,
anguish
yo,
and pain
yo,
and despair and like your livelihood. Like, fuck, like you just telling me the story. I'm sitting there, Ark looking at it, like, yo, this testimony,
yeah,
like,
yeah. This is,
bro,
and he's
this
never
is,
told me none of this. And
and
I want to chime in too because when we was working together, right?
fuck.
You see how his story and everything he's been through, but I swear to you, Polly was definitely the best customer service associate. Never in a bad mood. Didn't let things bother him. None of that. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, and he never told me none of this. So
Mhm,
it's like to go through all of this and still be able to show up and deal with people and treat
mhm.
them with respect. And it didn't matter. You didn't know if he was having a bad day ever. He could have been having the worst day and you would never know it. So
Right.
I say salute and kudos to you because that just says a lot about who you are.
And I want to know, like, what made you leave? Because I believe it was 2016 you left Team USA. Like,
mhm.
what made you leave Team USA to go to a country that didn't even want you, or did you even know they didn't even want you at the time? And you're just like, yo, I'm just going to go and play for Jamaica and slay for Jamaica. Like, what
No,
made you make that decision?
when I first came to the reason I left Team USA was one, the politics. There were 26 males, 17 women, three spots that we were all competing for. And you know how it
Mm-hmm.
goes when you're in a thing. You got the people who are close to the coaches, the people who the coaches make exceptions
Mm-hmm.
for, all the games of whatever. I kept a positive attitude because at the end of the day, it's just like it doesn't matter how close to the coach you are. If I beat you, then that's a case that I can make for myself. But I didn't have the resources and I couldn't afford to be good enough to beat them, if that makes sense. At the
Mm-hmm.
time, it cost way too much to be good in that
And
program. And
that,
so realistically, I wouldn't have gotten my shot realistically at an Olympic Games until this year. 2026 happening in Milano Cortina in 8 weeks in February. And so that would have been my realistic chance of finally being like, after 12 years of racing, 15 years of like doing all this other stuff, I now finally have a chance now that everyone's retired or that
mm-hmm.
everyone's like moved on. So a lot of athletes have done that. A lot of people have started with Team USA. Some have gone to Puerto Rico. I went to Jamaica. Other people have gone to like Israel. Other people have gone to like, Ireland and all these other smaller nations where you don't have much competition, but you also have the burden of all of the responsibility of finances and stuff because you're a new federation that has had no skin in the game whatsoever. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody has like got any time for you and stuff. So there's all those things to consider as well. So, but because I was somebody that had Jamaican lineage, I met somebody who was willing to like give me a fair chance. Now that guy got like mistreated and like kicked out of the program. So now I basically had to prove myself to a new string of people that came in. And when I wasn't willing to play ball with them, that's when they made things difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Even to the point, and like that was how it went getting there. I didn't even tell you what the experience was during the games. When I got to the Olympics, I was told by the Olympic Committee because the last FU, the last this that the federation gave me was after all of that I went through to qualify. They tell me the day after they tell me that I'm going to the Olympics, they're not sending me with a coach. So I'm like, you guys really want me to fail.
Wow.
I'm like,
Fuck.
I said, what else do I got to prove to y'all? What else do I got to go through to
Right.
get here? And I'm just like, I don't have a coach now. They're just like, oh, well, try to partner with somebody else and see if they'll share your coach. I'm like, that's like showing up to the Super Bowl without like a head coach and hoping that the other head coach will help you guys stay in the
Right.
game. And I told them, I said, listen,
Wow.
every athlete that is here has earned it. And they all deserve to have the people in place for them that are going to make their experience something that they can achieve. I said, it's that simple. I said, what else do I have to do to prove to y'all that I've earned this? And this is just the one thing that I need that's going to help me be better. And so they partnered me with one of my good friends from Ghana. But I told him and his coach, I said, listen, I have enough respect for you guys to not make me feel like a charity case. I'm not your
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. You knew you were qualified for the Olympics months ago. So I said, how fair is that to you? We're friends, but when it's race day, we're opposition. And if we're both getting the same notes, I'm like, now
Right. That's
there's
unfair.
there's nothing. I said and so I told them that my federation got really, really upset with me, being like, well, I don't understand why, it's almost like you don't want to go. And so the Olympic Committee, the Olympics as a whole entity, the vice president of the Olympic Games calls me and he's just like, he starts telling me, he's like, so tell me about your situation. I'm like, I don't really want to talk about it. I said, I've been getting in trouble all year. It's been stressful. I finally qualified and I just want to go there and I want to race. And he's just like, have you been to the track? And I was like, no. He's like, are you having with a coach? He's like, I'm like, no, they took my coach away. He's like, well, this is the thing that we're in. In 2010, there was a luge athlete from Hungary that slid in the fastest track in the world at the time in Vancouver, Canada. And you can read the story about it on the news and like anywhere on the internet. Had never been to the track, didn't have a coach, flew out of the track, hit a pole, and was instantly killed. So now the Olympics says that if you have never been on that track and you are coming without a coach, that is your coach's and your nation's responsibility, because that is their job to make sure that you're set up for success. So in light of all of that, they come back and tell me that that's not something that they can provide and that I just got to deal with it. The Olympic Committee comes and calls me and they say, you don't realize this. If you do not come with a coach, we won't let you compete because we're not going to have that on our hands. So I'm stuck. And so, you know, they said, this is what we'll do. They said, because I started panicking. I was like, listen, if you get me in trouble, they're going to send me home and like take my spot away. They're like, we already gave it to you. They can't do that. And if they do that, they're going to be in trouble. So, you know, they said, we'll talk to them. We won't put you under the bus. We won't put you in any compromising situations, but that's what you're owed. So instead of giving me my own coach, because if I had a coach, they got access to the Olympic Village, they would stay with me and they would go to training with me. And these people rode me into nothing mansville when I was at the Olympic Games, because the second day that I was there, they let me sleep. They called me into a meeting. They sat me down with my coach, this really ugly, retarded, you know, stupid, whatever, a liaison that I had at the time who was really making my life miserable. And then the other people on the organization, and they said, Anthony, you embarrassed us. You know, you went out here and started telling all these lies and everything else. And this is your ticket going back home tomorrow. I'm like, what did I do? And they said, I said, I did not say anything. They said, you talked to this person on the Olympic. I said, that person called me. And I said, here are my receipts. I said, see, incoming call. I don't have this person's number. And they were just like, so who do you think is the person that said? I said, don't you think you should have had that figured out before you started coming in here and threatening me?
Right.
And so they switched their tune now that they knew that I had nothing to do with it, you know. So then they went out of their way. They found someone on the girls who was coaching one of the girl skeleton athletes, and then her and I had to share. So I shared a coach with the girl slider from Nigeria. And so I'm just like, so still I had to like share a coach and stuff. And then to make matters worse, they really took me for a country ride, because on the days where I was supposed to be at the track, supposed to be training, they would take me away and say, you have mandatory media and press to do over here on this part of Korea. I'd go there with the girls bobsled team because we were both history makers at the time. And then they would take us to the interview rooms, and then I'd show up and the producers would be like, who are you? I'm like,
why are you here?
I'm Anthony. I'm the skeleton athlete. They were just like, oh, well, we asked for you, but they said you were unavailable, so we didn't put you in the schedule. So I'm sitting there watching all of my teammates get all of the hype, the media, and the news, intentionally being lured away from training to be put here and tortured with being able to see things without participating in it. We did a 4-hour media day where we sit on this big stage in this auditorium. Every country does it, where you sit on this big stage in this auditorium, and every news outlet, every reporter from the world comes there, and for 4 hours they just interview on like live television and for the Olympic channels and whatnot. So you got reporters from BBC, CNN, ABC, MSNBC, ABC, Fox, all this kind of stuff, every kind of ESPN Spanish, ESPN Netherlands, ESPN Europe, ESPN Canada, all these kinds of things. And I sat there for 4 hours and I got asked one question, but it was because it was a follow-up question, and I got ignored the entire time. And so I was there with a country that, from the looks of it, didn't want me, and made sure that I knew they didn't want me. And you know, when all of that stuff went down, there was a lot of drama with the bobsled team, and then the coach that they hired that actually helped the girls qualify, they fired her and then kept her sled and didn't give it back to her. So all of this stuff was going on. So whenever I'm finishing and I'm walking through media row, when I'm finished my runs and my competition and my race days and everything else, and they're just like, tell us about the bobsled coach. I'm like, I'm not a bobsledder. I'm here for skeleton. You don't want to know anything about me? And so, you know, all of that misery stopped the day my dad showed up. So my dad, I paid for him to fly out there. He came to come and watch me. He watched me walk in the opening ceremony. He came to my events, and then we would sit in the village together. One day we're walking in, we walked into the cafeteria, which is like a big stadium. The cafeteria itself was the size of like Lincoln Financial or like the Xfinity Center where the Sixers play. And right in there, that's where all the athletes ate. And I mean, like, you talk about buffet style, that's like fit for a king. You had food from every nation because athletes that are there from certain countries can only eat specific things. So it was like, and at the American cuisine, well, we have pizza, burgers, and hot dogs. I'm like, man, we got nothing, no steak, but like the Asian table was popping, the European table was
But you
popping. I was
able to
like,
go to the different.
oh yeah, you're able to go
Oh,
anywhere you
okay,
want.
okay.
It was just like, when you see certain things, it was like, it was whatever. You got free McDonald's because McDonald's was an Olympic sponsor. So everywhere you went
Uh-huh.
with your Olympic credentials, they're just like, what would you like? And I'm like, there's no payment, just take it. That kind of thing. So there are some fun things about it,
Right.
but I walk in with my dad. The federation sees me from across the cafeteria. They yell across the cafeteria in front of thousands of people, get over here, we need to talk to you. So I'm looking at my dad and I'm like, okay, Dad, you're finally going to get a glimpse of what I'm going through. And he's told me,
Uh-huh.
he looked at me, he's like, listen, that ends today. So we
Uh-huh.
walk over there, they start yelling at me and whatnot. My dad steps in front of me and then they're just like, and who the heck are you? He's like, I'm his father.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like privates to a 4-star general. They were like, oh, Mr. Watson, we love your son so much. He's been so good. Oh my gosh, all the great things he's done, man. I broke down. I was just like, I couldn't deal with it anymore, you know?
Wow. You
And so
listen. I want to know. Like, this shit is blowing minds. Like, you see Olympic, right? Olympian. You got the credentials. You there. Like, was it worth it, bro? Like, was it worth all the turmoil, the yelling, the screaming? Was it worth it just to say, yo, I was an Olympian? Because it's like, you see, like, people go on the page, they see the pictures, they see you with the Team USA, then Jamaica, then you see you, like, they see all of that, but they don't know this, right? So it's like, was it worth it, bro? Was it?
was it worth it financially? No.
Mm-hmm.
Was it worth it? Was it worth it personally? Yeah. Yeah. Because I wouldn't be who I am today without any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been at the doorstep of death itself. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've looked death in the face because I thought that that's all I was good enough for. I know what it's like to have a lot. I know what it's like to have nothing. It kind of reminds me of the verse that Paul said in Philippians, where he says, I know what it's like to have a little. I know what it's like to have a lot. I know what it's like to be in need, and I know what it's like to be in plentiful. But this is what I've learned, that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength.
Mm-hmm.
My faith played a big part in that because I'm a man of God. Have I always been a man of God? No. And I said, I've been the perfect example to a lot of people of what a man of God is not supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take that lightly, because at the end of the day, what I know with everybody that I come into contact with, they're souls and they're going to spend eternity somewhere. And I have the pedigree now of being where a lot of people have been emotionally, but not physically. A lot of people have been on their last limb, about to give up. A lot of people have been in the gutter, feeling like there's no hope and no way out for them. A lot of people have been struggling, feeling like all the work that they're doing is just a black hole of, like, emptiness that they're putting all of their stuff in with no bottom to it. And I can sit there and be like, listen, as pretty as social media looks, I said, this is the reality. And I said, I could care less about social media. I think that's one of the things that we talked about, because when we first started following each other, you're like, you didn't tell me this. I'm like, would you have liked me anymore if I did? I said, I don't care about that
Yeah,
stuff. I said, you know
yeah,
me.
yeah,
You know me
yeah,
personally. We've
Right.
met each other and
definitely,
we've talked. I said, now you just
definitely.
get to follow and see where I'm going from here. And that's why I tell you guys, it's just like, for as and I use heavy air quotes, for as tiny as you are now, this is just the beginning for where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone who wants the truth never wants it right away, because they're just riding where they are here. But people who
Right.
are only wrapped up in what they do fail to remember that it's terminal. It doesn't last forever. You need to be rooted in a foundation. Foundations are what stay constant.
Mm-hmm.
Titles that hang over your head, those change every single day. And you've got to be somebody that's willing to go after what you're grounded in, instead of doing this. Because people that chase things that are hanging over their heads, when it's gone, it's gone. And sometimes it'll lead you over a cliff, and they'll die chasing what they want, even when everybody else around them knows that it's over.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing to y'all is just like, there is a deep need for what you guys are doing. And I appreciate what y'all are doing. And I've been a heavy supporter of it from day one, because I know how hard it is to get up here and tell the truth. Not your version of the truth, not your opinion of the truth, the actual truth that
Right.
people need to hear. And guess what? The
Mm-hmm.
truth is never convenient. It's never comfortable. It's never working with your schedule. And it always calls out issues to their face.
Mm-hmm.
This world that we live in where everyone has to placate to everyone's feelings and how they
Mm-hmm.
are what have a lot of people confused, or what have a lot of people upset, or what have more of a divide in between people, when these things used to be things that everyone used to be in agreement on. But
Mm-hmm.
because everyone has now found ways to like get people emotionally charged about things, they get them riled up and then just leave them there. And then they don't give them any counseling, don't give them any coaching, don't give them any kind of advice or any kind of motivation or help to
Mm-hmm.
get past their feelings. Because the story of sports is when you sit here and you look at a team that you have to face, or you look at a race that you have to run, or you look at a moment that you need to step up and actually do your job, and you in your mind think that I am not capable of doing this. But the story of sports and the story of life itself is when you were faced against something that was impossible, and you focused and honed in on what you practiced, that became what went from talent to skill through the dedication that you put into it. That is what you now tap into to use to get you to the next level. And no one's talking that, because here it's just like, one, it's unattractive to talk about it because, it makes people feel bad, that kind of thing. But it's just like, the scripture is clear about it, where it says there's no greater love than this, than someone who's willing to lay their life down for a friend. Now, I'm not saying you got to go out there and like die for somebody, but you've got to be willing to let go of like thinking about people's egos, and you got to start thinking about their well-being as a whole.
Right.
Proverbs 27 says that wounds from a friend can heal. Or in other versions, it says wounds from a friend can be trusted, meaning that the truth from somebody who loves and cares about you, the truth will sting.
The truth
It'll
will
hurt.
sting. Yep.
It'll break
Yep.
your pride and your ego, because pride and ego is what always leads to downfall.
Yep.
It'll break that. And in the
Yep.
end, it says it'll heal, because whenever it does, that's when people always realize that what this person said. And when they realize the truth, they'll be thankful that somebody had enough stones to tell them what it
Yep.
was. And the
Yep.
rest of that verse says, an enemy multiplies kisses, meaning that people will kiss up to you. They'll kiss your rear end, even if it means they'll kiss it off a cliff,
Mm-hmm.
telling you what you want to hear instead of what you need to hear. And when you fall to your demise and get into trouble, guess where they are? They're nowhere to be found, because they don't like accountability. Accountability is every kind of person's kryptonite nowadays. But when you're able to take accountability for yourself, for the things that you've done and the actions that you've put yourself in, that's what separates you from the people who are all talk, from the people who are serious.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's only two types of people in the world. It ain't Republican, Democrat, it ain't whatever. It's saved or lost. Because the only thing that's guaranteed in life, in every circumstance that we find ourselves in, is death. Everyone here is going to die at some point, and it's not a matter of if, it's not a matter of how. Those are unknown. It's just a matter of when.
Mm.
And my biggest concern in every place that I go now is making sure that people hear the good news, because outside of sports, outside of insurance, outside of everything else, Jesus Christ is the only person who is undefeated at life,
Yep.
who defeated death itself, that offers you eternal salvation if you do things his way. And he's the best salesman ever, because the world, they'll sell you on all the good things, but then they'll hide the side effects. And when you deal with it, they tell you to suck it up, and they try to get you comfortable in your mess.
Right.
Christ is the only person who tells you what to expect. And even though it scares you at first, he says, don't be afraid, because I've overcome all of this. Gives you a perfect blueprint to get in and get out of it. And that's what drives me more than anything now, because I'm not going to be an athlete forever. I've been retired for 8 years now,
Mm.
and what I'm at right now is like going on almost 10 years of what was. I'm not an athlete anymore. All
Right.
these people who have acclaimed and done all this other stuff for like being temporarily known, that's why scripture calls it's fleeting. The only time I was famous in the Olympics was during the opening ceremony and during my event. Outside of that, 4 years later, there's new people that are walking and new people that are racing,
Mm.
and people are always sitting there leading in this kind of thing. And like when we first met, he didn't even know I was an Olympian. He noticed my tattoo.
Nah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, "You're an Olympian?" I was like, "Yeah." He's just like, "Why didn't you say that?" I was like, "Why?" I was like, "Why do I have to say it?" I was like, "The only thing you need to know about me is I'm a hard worker, and that I show up
Yeah.
on time, and that I care about
Yeah.
my coworkers and the people that I'm around."
Right.
Not every
Yeah.
day is going to be perfect. And, there's no
Yeah.
such thing as a bad day. It's just some days are better than most. That's what scripture calls being transformed by the renewing of your mind. You can be in the same circumstance, the same situation, and now you have a different outlook of it because of what you've been through to actually make you better for what people need to see. I am the only, and in some cases, the only example of what people may see of a Christian and an athlete. And
Mm.
how I carry myself may either help push that, or it may ruin it forever for the people who come into contact with me, But I have been through so much. And the only thing that has gotten me through it have been the people that have prayed for me and the people that have helped me see the bigger picture outside of my own circumstances, because I can't do anything. The only thing I can do consistently is mess up and screw up. But I tell everyone now, Christ is the only person who can take your mess and
Mm-hmm.
paint it into a beautiful masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
We just make the mess bigger. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so with you guys right now, you have a lot of young gentlemen, a lot of young women right now who are being led astray by lies that they believe because they think the world is easier. So by you guys having something as simple as a podcast where you talk about sports and give people an outlet away from life itself, that's a good thing. You know, and it's only going to be up from here because anything that's good has always started tiny. People that start in big things are the ones that have had things done for them and don't know how to do it themselves, or they're given something that was never meant to last in the long run. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you guys have a deep connection with sports because of what sports did for you, how
Yep.
it saved you, how it gave you an alternate to like gang life or all this other stuff, how you use that now to build communities. Because how many people have you become friends with now that you see at the courts and stuff?
Yep.
It taught you how to communicate. It taught you how to
Mm-hmm.
harness your feelings. It taught you how to stop talking and being emotional and get out there and bully someone in the paint and stuff. You know, it teaches you a
Yeah.
lot of things here. So by doing these kinds of things, you know, that's why I said it's just like, look, it takes men, brave men, to do what you guys are doing, and I commend y'all and I appreciate y'all for having me on here because I don't know if this thing is gonna crap out in an hour because I know Instagram is like really weird on
Yeah.
that
Nah,
time
not for
schedule thing.
us. It been keeping strong. I don't know.
Okay, good.
It been keeping strong for us. You know what? It's crazy, man. Like I'm like just I'm taking everything in, and like people need to have that kind of mindset the way that you have, and I think it's in part because of what you've been through. So you able to be that testimony to others and say, "Listen, man, I done been through some rigorous things in my life, but I'm able to, and I lived through that, and I'm able to be that person through me to you to able to tell you right, wrong, this, so it's
Right.
great that we came on and you said all of this stuff because, people that's watching it now or will watch it, they're going to resonate with that and be like, man, that guy spoke some stuff into me that was so powerful. And I'm, and having a platform that me and my bro have, it allowing people to come on and be their authentic selves, so I thank you for just saying
Yeah.
what you say, man. It was incredible,
Beautiful. Yes.
incredible, man. Like I'm just
Yes.
sitting here, just hearing, like, man, when Opus clip this up, like, yo, it's incredible, man. I
Yeah.
thank you, man. It's very
Hey,
important.
and
I
my
got my
my
kids
my
here
commitment,
too.
my commitment to y'all, since y'all are homies and stuff, because we're family now. We can't change that.
It's
Is
over, right?
I've got some really good athletic friends of mine. You know, pro soccer players, people in the NFL, NBA, overseas sports, Olympians. If you guys need guests for your show, you hit me up and I'll get you connected with them.
Oh,
Thank
absolutely,
you. Thank
absolutely,
you. Thank you,
absolutely.
brother.
See
Thank you,
how that
brother.
one you
Always.
plant that seed and then the seed
Yeah.
starts growing.
Well,
That's
look,
Yeah.
the
look, look. What good is accomplishing all of this if you gatekeep it? You
if you
know,
gatekeep it.
because then you
Absolutely.
stunt the growth of everything else. You know, the whole purpose of sports, like I said, and this is the one thing that I want people to know and understand. You can't appreciate anything you have unless you know what it's like to actually almost lose it, have
Yep.
lost it, and work to get it. People who
Yep.
have had everything handed to them may have more than you at the time, but that's all they have,
That's all.
you
Yep.
know? And people like that, they can't tell you anything when you're feeling sad. They can't encourage you when you need a word of encouragement. They can't motivate you because they don't know what it's like to actually go through anything.
Yep.
They're the people who have had it easy, and they're the
Mm-hmm.
people who always look for the easy way out when things need to, like, come together. And
Mm-hmm.
these are certain things that like money can't fix. We're in a place right now where there's like so many ways to like get wealthy, but you got very few people that actually have character.
Character.
And
Character.
character, for people on this podcast that are going to see it later, ain't just the feelings and the vibes that you carry and all this other stuff. There are two things that have made civilizations thrive, and two things, and the lack of two things that have kept them from going forward. And that is character and integrity. Two
Mm-hmm.
things that are synonymous and need each other to go forward, but two things that you have to learn separately.
Mm-hmm.
Character is who you are when nobody's looking. It's the habits
Mm-hmm.
that you develop. So all those people who try to like take one less rep and say that you did more, I'm just like, you're shorting yourself because you're not teaching yourself how to work through anything. You're teaching yourself how to take the easy way out.
Yep.
And I said, integrity is the result of your character that you now start showing in front of everybody else. And a lot of the people who are talking now, like I said before, you can't tell the difference between them and the people that they criticize and the things that they talk about when the cameras aren't rolling because they don't come from anything.
Mm-hmm.
Integrity and character makes you a well in life. You got far too many people who are like wetlands. Y'all know the wetlands of Africa, hundreds of miles of a body of water that's hundreds of miles long, reflects the sunrise and all the landscape around. It looks pretty, but it's only inches deep. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and you got a lot of people who are like wetlands. Their influence reaches hundreds of miles, hundreds of millions of followers, hundreds of millions of views, hundreds of millions of all this and that. But when you hear them talk, it's inches deep. It's the kind of stuff that you could get off a bubblegum wrapper or a fortune cookie, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And people are being
yeah,
like, subscribe to my podcast. You know, like that stupid girl that you saw on the internet. It's just like, don't love your job your love. I'm just like, and everyone's like, what?
What?
That kind of thing. You've got very few
yeah,
people who are like
yeah,
wells.
Yeah.
Wells don't spread wide, they go deep.
Deep. Yep.
They go to places where it's just you in the dark doing all of this work, getting overloaned, getting overworked, getting overstimulated and overwhelmed, and still having to dig. People pass you and lap you time and time again because they're running. Because when water runs out here, they got to walk over here, and they're just like, oh, well, don't mind them. They're just doing the same thing that they've been seeing time and time again until you
Mm-hmm.
hit the source and you hit a brook that starts to bubble up and fill all of that space that you took digging. And the lessons that you learned in the time of solitude, when all your friends were partying and doing all this other stuff, when you stayed focused to the work that you had to do, when all these other things were happening and you stayed dedicated in the same place that you were rooted in, now you have the reward that's not only there, but it never runs out, and it's got enough for you to give people when you need to and enough for you to sustain yourself. And so everybody, when all the wetlands dry up, they come looking for the people who were digging. And it's always
Mm-hmm.
the, hey, stranger, haven't talked to you in a minute. Tell me what's going on. Oh,
Right.
life has been crazy. Man, life really beat me up. And we're sitting here be like, well, we could have told you that, but we offered you what we had, but it wasn't attracted to you at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you expect? You're just getting the results of what you've put out there, you know? So
Mm.
you guys are wells. And right now, you're still in the digging phase. And you guys are going to keep digging until you find that one thing that sets you guys off, because there are far too many people that are using this as comparison to talk about hypotheticals. That's really sports.
Right.
Sports is
Mm-hmm.
sports analysis is always talking about what happened and trying to predict what could happen. It's
Mm-hmm.
very uncertain, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So it's all those kinds of things. When you're able to take sports and take the lessons that you learn from sports and give that to the people who tune in to watch, to tell them this is how you can apply this to your everyday life to set you up for your future, to separate you from your peers, to set you up for success, and to give you something to invest in, to teach you how to be dedicated, to help you stay committed, to make sure you overcome everything and learn how discipline will actually teach you as a young man and as a young woman, or as an adult man and as an adult woman, that this is how the world works. Scripture says is too few and far people enter through the short one because it's hard. But he says, but it leads to life. But he says the road that leads to destruction, everybody's on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because doing what's right always puts you in solitude. But solitude isn't bad. Isolation is bad, because isolation is when the group kicks you out because you have nothing to offer them and they don't
Right.
want nothing to do with you. Solitude is when you remove yourself from the group because the group ain't doing it for you
You're
anymore.
doing it
And
for
you
yep.
work on yourself so that when you come back, you got something to offer everybody that interacts with you.
God, like this is going to be probably our
yeah,
most clip viewed
yeah,
interview sermon that we had,
yeah,
because this was incredible. This was incredible, man.
yeah.
I
My
want to
boy
touch
Watson,
on
man.
I want to touch on one
Mhm.
thing. Because you had mentioned, you had brought your father. Like, how important, how pivotal is having that relationship with your father, and how has that shaped and molded you during those times and into now? Because I saw that on your gram with your father. So how he's
Oh man,
impacted you?
y'all gonna make me cry, man. But like relationships with your father are life and death. You know, you got a lot of fatherless men and women out here that are running around killing themselves because they're trying to chase the approval of people that can't give them anything.
Mm,
You know, my dad grew up a fatherless son. And there were, for the greater part of my life here in New Jersey, times where there was just felt like we'd sit next to each other and it felt like there was an ocean between us, because my dad was a person of very few words and he was very emotionally distant until I started getting older, and then we started like working on our relationship as father and son. And there were like a lot of hiccups, a lot of hurdles, and a lot of things we had to get through to work on it. But my dad was somebody that when it came to any major thing in my life, he was the first person that I ran to get his approval, because he was the person that meant the world to me. That's the impact of a father. That's
mm,
the impact of an influence to a son and to a daughter. And for people that look and be like, well, I don't have a dad, I don't think that there's anybody else that's out there that cares about me. My message to y'all is simple. Jesus Christ is God the Father, and he
mm,
looks for every single person that's running around looking for a daddy. because he said it himself that I know the plans that I have for you, plans to help you and not to harm you, plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope and a future. Something that earthly fathers wish for here, and sometimes they fail in miserably, but he never does. So even in having an earthly father here that helped me, my dad was somebody that got me rooted in my faith. And that's the biggest gift that I've had, because when people fail, my Savior hasn't. When people have let me down, he never has. When people have ran out on me and left me high and dry and left me up for dead, I was like, he was the person that was there to pick me up when I wanted to be picked up, because I spent a lot of my life running away from him. And I made a mess of it, you know? And so I think it's very pivotal here, because everyone here, and you can read all the books, you can read all of the spark notes and everything else that people will try and teach you to try and show you what it is to be like a good dad. But until you become a father, you feel like as soon as you're holding your baby girl or your son, you feel like you don't know how to do anything. And you've got to it's like, wait, what did the book say? What chapter was it? I don't know nothing, but it's a beautiful relationship where you get to cultivate, And that's something that I desire, in my life now more than anything, is to be a dad someday, because I want the kids that I have to know that, one, their dad loves them, and two, the things that they want in life are attainable if they practice and they train themselves to do things the right way. Scripture is clear to parents. It says, raise your children in the way that they should go, meaning teach them. Far too many people are growing up. When kids grow up, that's when they grow up taking influence wherever they find it relatable, even if it's bad. When people are raised, that's when parents determine what they get exposed to, and they have to tell them the same lesson over and over and over and over and over again until they get it and until it becomes a part of their DNA. That's what raising a child is. And it ain't pretty. You'll spend a lot more of your days getting I hate yous and I knows and all the other things. But I said, that's your job. Because guess what? That child's going to be in eternity somewhere. And guess what? God holds you responsible for wherever they end up. That's why children are a really big responsibility, So for you, being parents and being dads and all this other kind of stuff, it's just like salute to y'all, because I know that when you guys look at your children, you never see them as the world does. The world will look at them and see them as targets to, to promote propaganda or to get them upset to use them to get something that they want at their expense. And you're people who would lay your life down if it meant making sure that your children could have a better future. That's the heart of a dad who's willing to give up everything that he wants for the safety and security of his family. And very few people have that kind of fervor. Very few people have that kind of attitude. And by you guys doing this, you guys are going to have a bigger audience of a lot of people who don't come from these kind of environments that see you two as father figures. So y'all got to prepare yourselves for that, because now you guys don't know it, but you're mentoring people. The internet's a tool, but in the wrong hands, a tool can become a weapon. So instead of being it to do everything else that you see out there promoting violence and gangs and promiscuity and all this other stuff, use it to promote it to tell people, hey, get to work. Get off your rear end and go out there and go make something of yourself, because I said the world don't owe you anything. You got to go out there and prove to yourself amongst everybody else why you deserve a seat at the table. No one's going to give it to you. But you do it in a humble way, because scripture always tells you this. It says when you go to a party, it says take the humble seat, meaning don't take the seat at the head. He says take the humble seat, because if that seat wasn't meant for you, you're going to embarrass yourself going up there and being asked to move. But he said if you sit at a humble seat and you get elevated a couple seats up, it shows the honor that the guest has for you. That's the kind of attitude that you walk in. I never walk anywhere telling people of my history, because that's where it is. It's history. It's in the past. I'm not doing it anymore. But I learned a lot of things to make me able to be better in the present moments where I meet coworkers, friends, and people who I pass by and meet in airports, supermarkets, and any other place, that you're able to turn any kind of conversation into something that could be life-changing for someone. And you never know. That's why you got to be willing to live what you speak, because far too many people speak and then try to live it, and then that's where they contradict themselves. It's not an easy thing to do, and anyone who has ever been anything and made anything of themselves have more stories of where they failed than when they got it together, but at least they're trying, but it's not just about trying. You got to make a commitment to
make it. Yep.
And you don't try to do what's right in the moment when it comes, because 9 times out of 10, by that time, you've already compromised, and it's easier for you to get, misled. You make up your mind ahead of time of what you won't do. So all the young men that are watching this, listen, all of y'all, for all of you, the dreams and aspirations you have, listen, young men, a good woman will help you build on the dreams that you have, but it takes one woman to destroy all of it. Young ladies, I said, a good man can help you achieve everything you want, but I said it also takes one man to manipulate you and twist you and then jade your whole perspective of the world through one greed, through one act of selfishness. Everybody who's chasing virality, don't. Virality is the one thing that people never talk about. It's temporary.
Mm.
Be focused on being a good individual in private, because your public effectiveness is a byproduct of your private devotion. And who you are in public is going to determine whether people actually have a restored hope in humanity by how you act, or if you're going to be the person that continues to shell people up and now rely on AI. I
Mm.
can't stand artificial intelligence, because everything that's artificial based off of dieting and drinks and like dyes, it all kills you. Same thing with
Mm.
artificial intelligence. It kills your drive. It kills your creativity. It kills your ability to think cognitively when you realize and put that on something else. The AI that I promote is actual intelligence. You read, you study, you learn, so that when you come into places, you don't have to go to ChatGPT to figure it out and then try to learn it. You've already learned it, so you can do it without having to open up a computer screen. You do all of those things. That is like, because sports is only a temporary thing. A lot of people use it to get certain places, and then the lessons you learn there are what actually helps you sustain yourself in the new areas that you elevate yourself to next. So, long story short, in all of this, it's just like, if you're a parent, if you're a father, it's just like that, invest in your family. Because when you became a parent, everything that you wanted in life stopped when now you have to take care of people. And now you
Mm.
have to put all your investments in there. Hey, nothing wrong with you rewarding yourself and having things that you'll like from time to time. But your vision has to change, because every single person that has ever had any kind of influence in life that people love and respect were always people that sacrificed. Christ did it. The people that you know and see every single type of way, that with regardless of what they got, they did what was good for everybody else. Those are the people and images and examples that people follow blindly. Because
Mhm.
outside of viral moments that faded, that people scroll past now, nobody in the history of their life, you two gentlemen, nobody from the you two guys and everyone you come into contact with, have never ever forgotten from the time you were cognitive until present day when you experienced somebody who changed your life by how they treated you. And that example is what you take, because that's what meant something to you, that actually made you better in that moment, and that you keep with you, that keeps you grounded in the moments where everything gets challenged. So that is my goal, and that is my mission, and that is what I bless y'all with.
Salute. Yeah. Yeah. My boy Watson, man. Always been this way. You know, Pleasure having you on. And I knew, because we would have talks and similar, you know what I mean? So, like I always said, man, great guy from the beginning and always been the same. And it was an honor having you on, my brother.
Honor.
Always. Always.
Honor.
Listen, you guys call me anytime you need me. I will be there. Listen, like we go way back, so I'm not even gonna question it. He was just like, "You want to do it?" I didn't even say, "Let me look at my schedule." I said, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah.
Honor.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey man, listen, I want to again say thank you, man. This has been a great episode. Like we could go on and on and on, but this was phenomenal, man. Thank you so much insight, so much knowledge, so much just positivity and words of encouragement that my son is sitting over there. I'm sure he heard it. My daughter over here, so it was great, man. And I just want to thank you, man. My final question for you. I had a whole
Yeah.
bunch, but I ain't gonna get to all that shit.
I know.
I just
I
I just gave it
apologize.
away.
I'm a
Nah.
professional yapper. I
Yeah,
talk for a living, so
Yeah.
conversations
listen,
normally
listen.
never go according to plan.
I threw it. I was like, it's over. But my one final question, being that you was, an Olympian, would it be ever something that you would think about, like teaching skeleton sledding? Is that something that you ever think about teaching?
I mean, like, the only way that you can teach somebody that is by taking them to places where you can actually teach them on the track, which is either in the United States is Lake Placid, New York, or it's Salt Lake City, Utah. But I mean, like, I do a lot of like sports clinics where I just like work with kids on like training techniques like sprinting, form, weightlifting, that kind of stuff, because you need to have that down packed before you learn that. You don't have a good base of athleticism and strength and core and all that kind of stuff, like you'll be like every other person that just thought, watched a movie and saw it on TV and it was like, I can do that. And then the track beats you almost to death. And you're just like, yeah, I
Mhm.
don't want to do that anymore. But I do love kids, so I mean, like, I'm around the country in high schools and colleges all around, sharing this story. But like, I don't really like talking about myself because, like I said, it's just like I can only talk about myself for so long before I get sick of myself.
Mhm.
I talk about things from a place, outside of politics, because I feel like politics, makes more of a mess, and everyone's like, why don't you talk about politics? I'm like, for this reason. I was like, you can derive politics and define it in one definition: poly, which is Latin meaning many, and
Mhm.
ticks, which are blood-sucking leeches, which is what everyone thinks about when it comes to politics and whatnot. But I talk to people from a place, of hopelessness, because all of us have felt that way. I've talked about a place of, like anger, betrayal, hurt, but I also talk about hope, inspiration, motivation, encouragement, faith. and and character and meritocracy, things that you earn through your hard work, because everyone is working towards something. I just want everyone to know that in the end, like scripture says, don't store yourself up treasures here on earth. It says work and store yourself up treasures that you'll get in heaven, because we're all destined for something. We just don't know when it's going to come. And I appreciate y'all. And for as much as I consider you guys brothers here on earth, I want to make sure that at the end of the day, we're brothers in Christ, so that we get to party here and we get to party later on. Because if this year has taught us anything, it's like you cannot bank on anything that makes life secure, because COVID shut the world down. All of these other things, made things a little uneasy and unstable for a lot of people. The only thing that you will have to answer for in the end, which determines where your eternity is what did you do with my son while you were on earth? And, we're here to talk sports, but at the end of the day, my friends and my brothers, all I can tell you is that sports is a temporary thing, but faith is forever. So you have to pick which one you want to live for. And I was an athlete, but I was a Christian first. So I was a Christian that turned my athleticism when God got a hold of my heart and reshaped it. And I turned that into my mission field, because at the end of the day, if you're just chasing a medal, people have gotten them. And I've seen people kill themselves. I've seen people, hurt themselves. I've seen people drink themselves into comas because once they got it, they thought that it was supposed to change their life and nothing happened. I said, that is the peak. There is no ceiling and there's no other height to go once you get this. So I'm like, once you get that, then what?
Right. Then what? Right.
It's got to be something deeper. And, when you're fighting for the heart of America, which is through the heart of its people and through the heart of the young people that are now going to take up the mantle, that will always give you something to fight for, because there's always somebody that needs the message that you have. And through this podcast, giving you 2 cents about sports, there are so many life lessons that you can tack onto this, because everybody loves sports. Everybody loves being entertained. Everybody loves, cheering for something. Everybody loves, the underdog, And everybody in life, needs to learn how to cheer for themselves. They need to learn how to see themselves as not an underdog. And when they are, how to channel into the things that they've practiced, how to tap into their faith and actually push forward when the world has given them every reason and excuse to stop and turn around, So I would consider coaching in a long-winded way.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, man. Again, thank you, Ant, for coming on, man. This was 2 Cents Exchange, the podcast. I know for some people, what is he doing? What are they doing on a Saturday? Listen, we called him up. You got to say, we got to get it done, man. So I thank you once again, man. Appreciate you.
Always. Listen. Man. I appreciate y'all. I know we're on live, but can I pray for y'all real fast?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jesus, thank you so much for this day. And thank you that it's a new year. And even in this new year, with everything that we went through last year, God, you said that yesterday, today, and forever, you're the same. So 2024, you were the same. 2025, you're the same. 2026, you'll still be the same. And in 2027, you'll still be the same. So I pray over my friends. I pray that you would bless the work of their hands, touch their children, touch their spouses, and touch their household. Let them be men of faith that want what you want more than what they can feel like the world can offer them. Help this podcast to grow in ways that they never even imagined, for the message of hope that can actually touch more hearts than stats, accolades, acquisitions, and championships, God, because you in the end are the one who has never lost. You've always been undefeated, and you will never have anything defeat you in the world that we find ourselves in now. So I thank you for all of them. I pray that you would bless them and make this year a profitable and prosperous year through the work that they do, following you wholeheartedly in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And on that note,
man,
McLean,
Smelly Mel, and thank you to my brother Anthony Watson for joining us today, man.
Always appreciate y'all.